After years of idealism and progressivism, Americans long for what Republican presidential nominee Warren G. Harding called a return to normalcy. And with his election in 1920, a new era of good feeling was ushered in, but the 1920s would be anything but normal. With the ratification of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, the era of prohibition began. Although alcohol was now illegal in the United States, it became quite evident that widespread enforcement of the law was virtually impossible. Between illegal distilling and smuggling, liquor continued to be available and was used in large quantities. Speakeasies teeming with the sounds of jazz flourished and were quickly taken over by gangs which controlled the flow of alcohol through connections with police, bribes, and assassinations. By 1923, Chicago crime lord Al Capone had several hundred men at his disposal. The revenue that Capone and others like him collected amounted to what is estimated at $60 million a year. On February 14, 1929, Capone had his men gun down members of a rival gang. There was a public outcry over the killings, and what became known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre would be the beginning of the end of Al Capone. In the 1930s, he was convicted of income tax evasion and sent to jail. When Warren Harding died of a heart attack in August of 1923, Vice President Calvin Coolidge became our nation's 30th president. He was elected in his own right in 1924. His was an era of unprecedented prosperity. The 1920s was also considered the golden age of sports. Jack Dempsey was heavyweight champion. Babe Ruth hit homers for the New York Yankees. Bobby Jones ruled the game of golf. Coach Newt Rockne and Notre Dame's Fighting Irish dominated college football. And Gertrude Ederle, in record time, became the first woman to swim the English Channel. The 1920s also saw the first Miss America pageant, the rise of radio, the birth of jazz, the first talking motion picture, and the first transcontinental flight in an airplane. On May 20, 1927, Charles Lindbergh flew his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, from New York to Paris in under 34 hours. When he returned home to the United States, he was given a ticker tape parade down Broadway and became a true American hero. The automobile was one of the chief contributors to the remarkable changes that were taking place in the 1920s. In 1919, there had been a little over 6 million passenger cars owned by private citizens, but thanks to Henry Ford's mass production techniques, by 1929, there were 23 million cars on the road. During the 10-year period, the impact on the economy was monumental. Gas stations flourished, highways were constructed everywhere, roadside stands were erected, tourism increased, and the railroad gave way to passenger bus lines. But there was a dark side to the 1920s as well. There was the Scopes monkey trial in Dayton, Tennessee, where the teaching of evolution was put on trial. The KKK had a surge in membership and proudly marched through the streets of Washington, D.C., and in October of 1929, the absolutely unthinkable happened.